All right, now we got time. Well, good evening. How's everyone? Welcome. May we have a call to order? And so at this time, would you please join me as we stand up and salute our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bless you. All right, thank you very much. Roll call, please.
Chairman Taylor?
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahayab?
Here.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Here.
Member Van Deven?
Here.
Member Wheelis?
Here.
All right, we have a full quorum and 5 people, so we're ready to go. Looking back at the minutes on the April 28th, 2021 meeting, did anyone notice any changes or additions that need to be made to the minutes?
No.
Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I will move to approve the minutes.
Very good. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so moved. Okay, speech time. Good evening. All persons who anticipate speaking on a public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained thereon. These cards are located at the table near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with procedures adopted in Resolution Number 24, 1997. Yes, so if you plan to speak tonight on any of the items, right over there are some cards that need to be filled out prior to the item being called up and just handed up to the secretary, please. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those opposed will be heard second. And those who wish to make a public comment on an item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. Please submit these evidence to the recording secretary. All right. So we're verifying everybody is signing their oath card to turn in. Staff, have the agenda items on tonight's agenda been properly advertised?
Yes.
And do we have all 3 going forth tonight?
Correct.
We do have all 3. Very good. Members, have you visited any of the sites or spoken to any members of the public regarding any item to be reviewed this evening?
I have at one time or another over the past few years visited every one of these sites, and I am familiar with them, but I don't believe that affects my judgment in any way, shape, or form.
But you have not spoken to anyone?
Have not spoken to anyone.
Very good.
No.
No? No. All right, seeing none, we'll move on. We have nothing on the consent agenda or the old business, so we will move to new business. And the first variance coming up before us is variance number 5-2120, and that is in regards to 4825 Sisson Road, a screen enclosure. Staff, would you please enlighten us?
So variance 5-2021 begins on page 6 of you all's agenda.
Page 6, thank you. Bingo. All right.
So the applicant, United Excel Investment, is requesting a variance to Land Development Regulations 28-307, Intensity and Dimensional Standards, to exceed the 50% maximum building coverage required for a screen enclosure addition to the home on property located in multifamily high-density residential zoning district located at 4825 Sisson Road. The surrounding zoning districts are to the north, south, and east, multifamily high density, and to the west, single-family medium density. The property does not meet the minimum width and size requirements in the R3 zoning. The R3 requires a minimum 2,000 square feet for a townhome lot and a width of 20 feet. The lot is rectangular in shape with 15 linear feet of frontage that runs adjacent to Sisson Road. The property is .03 acres, 1,350 square feet, and the townhome consists of 570 square feet of the lot. The townhome was developed in 1980 as part of the Pine Tree Gardens plat. The townhome was built on the property in 1981 prior to the current R3 zoning requirements. So Section 34-226 states the criteria when used to determine a variance. A, special conditions and circumstances exist which are peculiar to the land, structure, or building involved and which are not applicable to other lands, structures, or building in the same zoning. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other lands, buildings, or structures in the same zoning districts. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the ordinance. The variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance and remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. In granting the variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured, and in no case shall the granting of variance result in a change of use, which would not be permitted in that zoning. So the applicant is requesting a variance to the building coverage requirements for the addition of a screen enclosed porch at the rear of the home. Section 28-307 of the code states that the R3 zoning district requires a lot building coverage that shall not exceed 50%. The applicant is unable to comply with the requirement as there is an existing concrete slab on which the screen enclosure will be built. Several lots in the neighborhood also include those screen enclosures, although staff could not determine if those structures are non-conforming. There have been no other variance requests related to screen enclosures for this neighborhood. The applicant is proposing a screen porch that will measure 210 square feet, which will bring the total building coverage to 57.7% of the lot, which was an estimated 105 square foot addition. And the property includes a 15-foot easement at the rear of the lot. So staff recommends approval of the variance. In granting the variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured, and is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the structure. The rear addition will be plus 25 feet from the rear property line and outside the rear utility easement. Staff doesn't believe that the welfare and safety of public is at risk with granting the variance, as 7% addition will not impact the surrounding lots. In addition, the literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicants of the rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning. The townhome lot does not meet the minimum size and width required in the multifamily high-density zoning district. That concludes my presentation. I'll be able to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of staff at this time? Yes, sir.
If I may, please.
Yes.
Has the building department reviewed this application?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And they found no issues with separation requirements related to the adjacent structures?
No.
Okay. That's my only question.
Yes, sir.
I have one question. This subdivision has been in since 1980.
Yes.
You mentioned at the very beginning that it is non-conforming, this lot,
Correct.
but it's a part of a subdivision that has been approved back in 1980.
Correct.
So if it's non-conforming, right, what do you do now? I mean, you just keep it non-conforming, or is that part of our variance today?
Right, which is why this is becoming before you all, because as it is non-conforming, obviously they're trying to get that variance so that that screen enclosure, that building coverage percentage could be conforming.
Okay.
If I may, existing non-conforming is the term that staff would refer to that. And it means that the building can remain there and is not conforming to today's standards, but it's certainly conforming to the standards that it was built to. So there's no need to go in to do anything different other than in the event of a change than the change in this case being the addition of the screen enclosure requires the conformity of the existing, of the new structure. If I confuse the issue totally now.
I don't want to confuse the issue. But this structure, it has a cover on top of it already, right?
As it is existing, there is no coverage on that back screen porch. It's only that concrete slab.
It's only the concrete slab.
Correct.
Must have been looking at the aerial. It seems like it had a cover. But
It
maybe
seems
I'm
as though
wrong.
there was at one point a screen enclosure, but there's nothing to indicate for a fact that there was.
Okay.
But as it is right now, there is no screen enclosure. It's just that concrete slab.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, that answers that question. There's a slab there. Are there any other questions of staff before we open to the public? All right, very good. So we'll open the item up for discussion from the public. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
All right. Then we will, what do I ask if there's anybody from the public? Is there anybody from the public? There's nobody here to speak then, so nobody filled out a card. Nobody's here for that
No, sir.
item, right? Okay. All right, then we'll close the public hearing at this time and bring it back to the board for consideration. Are there any further questions of staff? Okay. Staff has recommended approval, so what would be your desire, please?
I'll move to approve variance 5-2021 4825 Sisson Road. I was looking for the specific section number, but it doesn't matter. I move to approve that variance.
I second the motion.
We've had a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, may we have roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahaya?
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Very good. So that has been approved. So we'll move on to our next item, which comes up on variance number 7-2021, 90 South Singleton Avenue, the new Launch Credit Union development. Staff, would you please enlighten us?
So this item begins on page 19 of the agenda. Would you guys take a second? So the applicant is requesting a variance to section 30-335C, Exhibit A, buffers, to allow less than the required 30-foot landscape buffers for property located in the regional commercial and open space and recreation zoning districts located at 90 South Singleton Avenue. The surrounding districts are to the north, unimproved public right-of-way and property zone regional commercial. To the south, open space and recreation and residential estate. To the east, Singleton Avenue and property zone regional commercial. And to the west, open space and recreation. The property meets the minimum width and size requirements in the RC zoning district. The lot is rectangular in shape with 284 square feet of frontage along Singleton Avenue. And the property is 2.89 acres in size and is currently a vacant lot. I've already mentioned the powers of the board, so I'll move ahead to the analysis. So Technical Manual 9.16.4 establishes the minimum parking requirements for development within the city. The proposed development does contain an excess amount of parking, as the code requires 15 spaces and the applicant is providing 50. Staff did approve the additional parking spaces if a parking calculation could be provided that justified the excess parking and all the requirements of the code for development were met. The applicant did provide the special demand parking calculation. However, the necessary landscape yard requirements per section 30-335 were not met. So section 9.3 roadway classification map designates Singleton Ave as a collector roadway. Per section 30-332 required landscape yards. Landscape yards adjacent to collector roadway is required to have a type B buffer. According to section 30-335, description of landscape yards, type B buffers are required to have a minimum width of 20 feet. However, section 30-335C requires a 30-foot wide landscape buffer along the segment of South Singleton Avenue. Sections 30-332 and 30-335 are in conflict with regards to the required minimum buffer width in accordance to Section 28-4, conflicting sections. The more restrictive shall prevail. Staff recommends to disapprove the variance to reduce the 30-foot landscape yard requirement. The proposed 50 parking spaces are in excess of 233% per the required parking. A 30-foot landscape yard would require the applicant to remove 4 of the proposed parking spaces to 46 spaces. Special conditions and circumstances do result from the actions of the applicant as the parking spaces encroach into the landscape yard as a result of the additional parking that was proposed. In addition, granting the variance requested will confer upon the applicant special privileges that are denied by the ordinance to other lands in the same zoning district. Section 9.16.4 of the technical manual establishes the parking requirements for the development. Although special calculations allow for additional parking spaces, staff could not recommend the approval of parking spaces as a replacement for vegetation. That concludes my presentation. I'll be able to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, isn't the additional parking spaces, the maximum you can have is 125% of, right? The
Correct.
maximum recommended by the city is 125% of the required parking, right? Not more than that. There is a certain limit that they can increase the number of parking spaces.
I know there is a number out 125%. I'm not sure if that is that threshold, but I know there is a number.
Okay.
Well, on that same vein, just eliminating 4 still goes over that threshold. Does staff see a problem sticking with that number, the 48 number then?
If we're not here on the parking though, we're here on
No.
landscape, right?
Correct.
Strictly landscape. Okay, well, all right. Then I'll withdraw. Thank you. No question. Anyone else have a question, staff? Yes, sir.
Never mind, it was on the same vein.
All right. Okay, no other questions in of staff? Then we will, okay.
One question, because if they come in, let's say they take the 4 parking spaces out, but still, although this is not about parking spaces, the 200 or the 200% parking spaces that they're going to have, either they have to go back to a variance or go down to the DRC, right?
It'd be an administrative waiver.
It would be administrative. Okay.
All right.
All right.
That's good. I didn't want to have to come back again for another.
Just, has an administrative approval already been given for the parking?
No, it hasn't gone before the committee yet.
All right.
The technical manual is not part of the code in which this board operates under, correct?
I didn't catch that. In which there was a cough.
It's referenced in here, technical manual 9.16.4. Is that part of the code that the BAA operates under?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Seeing no other lights, we'll open up the public hearing, and may we have the first card, please?
Selby Weeks.
Yes, welcome, and would you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Absolutely. Selby Weeks with Klima Weeks Civil Engineering. Address is 385 Douglas Avenue, Suite 2100 in Altamont Springs. I'm the civil engineer for the client on the project, so I'd like to provide a little bit of color on all this. And I don't mind, I know that I don't mind answering the parking questions. So I know that's not what we're here to ask, but I think it's probably relevant to the conversation. So I'll kind of give you a little bit of lead in maybe here, tell you how we got to where we are, and then you might have some additional questions. So we started due diligence on this project last year, and during the due diligence period, we provided a concept plan to staff, and we also asserted we had done our review of code. And so we presented, these are our findings of code. Would you confirm whether we're right or wrong on these different issues? And so one of the issues, which is obviously relevant tonight, is that we came in and said, hey, we think the buffer on Singleton's 30 feet, but staff actually came back and said, no, it's 20 feet. And we have an email to this, so there's no conflict. Staff would confirm what I'm saying here. So I've had multiple conversations with them about it, and so they recognize that they led us to believe that it was 20 feet. And I understand how they came to that conclusion. So, Naviel explained that what the code says and that there's a conflict. The interesting thing in the code is that it says that you require a type B buffer for this type of road, and that's a 20-foot buffer. And then maybe a page later in the code, it also says that for along arterial roads, a 30-foot buffer is required. And that's really all it says in the buffer section. Then there's a map. If you go to the next page, there's this map that has some almost like highlighting on roads. And it says the following road sections require a 30-foot buffer. So there's a short section of Singleton that has a 30-foot buffer required. But according to that, though the previous one would have led you to believe that it's 20 foot. So Singleton, clearly, I don't think I probably need to convince anyone here that Singleton's not an arterial. But beyond that, the city's code actually says it's a collector. So there's no confusion there, that it's a collector road, 20-foot buffer, but then there's this one map that's in conflict with everything else that says 30 feet. So staff said 20 feet. We said, okay, well, we revised our site plan. It was actually helpful because we have two larger than 20-inch diameter oaks back in the northwest corner of the site. I don't know if you guys have the site plan available to you there on your computers, but what it allowed us to do is shift everything 10 feet forward on the site. And the client a lot of concessions have been made to be able to make this site work. We're in the area of critical concern with a maximum of 30% impervious. So despite the number of parking spaces we're providing, we're only going to 30% impervious on this site. We're building a wall on 3 sides of our pond to reduce the pond footprint to make this project fit within the area of critical concern. And at the same time, what that wall also does is it gets us out of that critical root zone on those large trees. In saving those large trees, we save 9 other trees in that same area. So we've got a bunch of trees up in the northwest corner that we're preserving by building a wall off of outside of the critical root zone on those trees. So the next thing is that during our due diligence period, I talked to KB, city engineer, about our parking requirements, because this is another thing I would argue here is that the city's code would say for this drive-through credit union that we need 15 parking spaces if you round up. And you're correct about the maximum number. It's 125%, gets you around 18 spaces, all right? Well, you guys probably know Launch Federal Credit Union is a local credit union here in the area and along the Space Coast. And so they've got a number of branches. And so based on data from those branches, we prepared a parking study. Just as a just basic rule of thumb, we've got 13 staff during peak operating hours. So how can you have 13 staff and 15 parking spaces? It's crazy. So these guys, they know what they need, but also based on the numbers, the parking demand study it's a city kind of format that you fill in the blanks and you go through the calculations. So it's not something that we engineered. It's something that was provided by the city, that we provided our information based on information from the client. So the conclusion of the parking study is that the parking demand is 47 spaces. We're proposing 48. I know that the report says 50. When you look at the cover sheet, it says 50, but if you really look harder at the cover sheet, the way that the city's calculations work out, it includes bicycle spaces. So we have 2 bicycle spaces. That's how we get to 50. So we're only 1 over what the actual demand is. And when working with KB early on in the project, prior to even submitting, he reviewed our study and said, yeah, I can support this. So we were told before we ever put everything together that, they would support it. And staff has said that all along. They've never backed off of that. So, and we provided the parking demand study during the review. Today was the first time that I heard, and this is my fault, I have to admit, because I'd been told, talking to Brad Parrish, that staff was going to support our request tonight. So I pulled up the staff report today before I came just to make sure that I reviewed what was in there, and I saw a denial, and I thought, what in the world is going on? So I called Brad before the meeting. He explained to me what had happened, apologized, but here we are. So up until this afternoon sometime, I thought we were coming in here with a recommendation of approval from staff. And what's happened is that at the last minute, KB recognized, it sounds like, that, oops, over 233%, we have to have a waiver. So it's hard for staff to recommend approval of this variance when we're already over the 233% parking, even though the parking demand study justifies it. So it's like staff kind of got caught in a bad spot here at the last minute, and now they're having to recommend denial, even though until a week ago, they were telling me that we were going to be recommended for approval. There's a lot more in here. I don't know if you, I can't imagine, I don't know if you read all these reports, but I have a lot of information here about specifics of this site. So, we've got overhead power lines on the front. We've got a wetland in the back. We're in that area of critical concern. We've built walls to save trees. We've put in like 40% of our parking spaces are pervious parking that we've put in to be able to encourage recharge. We spent $13,000 on a geotechnical analysis, a hydrologist analysis to demonstrate that what we're doing doesn't impact the neighbors negatively, and also increases recharge. So we'll have more recharge on this site when we're done than there is out there today. So we've done an enormous amount of due diligence on this site before we ever started. Got in here, and now we get close to the end, and we've got this big problem. So that's probably enough talking for at one time. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
If you would, for the board's education, the adjacent structures, could you go over what structures are adjacent specifically and what their uses are, or if you're familiar with them? Meaning, in fact, the shopping center, the Walgreens, I think there's a flag lot that goes back to a multifamily building, that type of thing. Are you familiar with those?
Yes. Yeah, so we've got north of us, we've got basically an older shopping center that we actually we wanted to redevelop a lot in there, but because of code issues and things, we couldn't make that happen. It was already had too much impervious on it to start, and for us to remove the impervious and come back in with less impervious, we couldn't meet code because of the way it was written. So it basically makes it's like you can't redevelop that shopping center without having a major loss. Across the street to the east is another shopping center. West of us is a large wetland system, of which a tiny bit encroaches into our site, but the back part of our site is that OR zoning, which I understand the intent of the OR zoning was that the city was intending to protect wetlands, and so they used a national wetlands inventory map to create it. But unfortunately, on our site, it wipes out a bunch of developable area on the back, whereas there's really only a wetland back at the very far west end. So we can't build in that portion because they were trying to preserve wetlands, but really they preserved about probably 50 times the wetland that's on the site. South of us, like you said, is a flag lot. There's a flag lot to residential that sits back, I would say, southwest of the project site. And then we've got on the other side of that flagpole, if you will, is another residential development down there. And I know you didn't ask this question, but our site, because we had to fill it because we have to have a dry pond for the recharge purposes, we're filling 3.5 feet at the pond bottom. So we've got a site that does this. We're having to fill up 3.5 feet so that we can have a pond that actually recovers. And so our site sits up. And so when you're down there, it's the wall and the landscaping will act more like a berm, and we don't have parking on that south side. When I say we don't have parking facing the south side or lights or anything, we have the drive-through lanes on the south side that would operate during normal business hours. Does that answer your question? Did I get to the point?
It does. Hopefully that cleared up the issues for other people that weren't familiar with the site.
I'd like to hear more about, you indicated that there's 20-foot buffer requirement on, I don't know if you said the majority or at least a significant portion of Singleton. Can you go a little bit more into that about the section of Singleton near the property? Yeah,
I don't know why. Nobody's told me why that section is different, but what I guess in my own mind as an engineer looking at it, they came off of Garden. So it's from Garden south to a point south of us is the portion that's required to be 30 according to that, again, according to the map. It doesn't meet the requirements, on the previous page of the land development or the technical provisions or land development code, it wouldn't be required to have a 30-foot buffer. It would be a 20-foot buffer, and only an arterial would require 30 feet. But, yeah.
Yes, sir. No, I was just saying, any questions? No. Yeah.
This area in Garden Street and Singleton, it's a little bit congested, especially getting into Walgreen in that location. And if you go a little bit further south to Tropical, there's the right-of-way, it's a little bit wider. And I'm not sure if, like in the future, if the city has any plans of widening the road from Tropical all the way to Garden Street. That's about at least 10 feet or 15 feet in addition to the 50 feet that's existing today. And I'm not sure if you looked at that before, but if you reduce to 30 feet, then that limits the amount of improvement that the city can do within that roadway.
Well, and I hear what you're saying, and no one's indicated to me that there was an intention to widen the road, but you are right. The right-of-way is constricted where we are, which so our driveway ties in at the edge of the pavement where we tie into is almost at the right-of-way line right now. So now you do have the overhead power lines. You've got a major overhead power lines running through that area that were the purchaser or the seller was. I want to say it's Florida Power and Light. I think it's FPL. Is that right? Yeah. So FPL was the seller, and they retained an easement in the purchase contract to continue to have those overhead power lines there. Now, I guess I would say that look, in the future, if there's a taking. You're taking maybe, if to your point, you're taking 4 parking spaces. We're not putting the building in a place that's going to cause a total taking. So if in the future you need it to take right of way, then what we're talking about is 4 parking spaces. Those are important to our client. Our client waited a month to get here to be able to get on this board hearing with the understanding that we were going to have a recommendation of approval. That was how important it was to them when they have other people they have a competitor building in the area, so our client is very antsy to get under construction and move along with their project, but they were willing to wait a month. These 4 parking spaces were that important to them. So.
Anyone else have a question for this witness? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other cards, please?
Yes, sir. Ron Chacon.
And is Mr. Jones speaking for or against?
Against.
Very well. Your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Hi, I'm Ron Chacon. I'm at 100 South Singleton. And I'm not necessarily against. My wife and I own the property to the south of this and to the west, actually. So I may be able to answer any other questions you have about the surrounding site. From what I've heard, I would like to say that I believe if what the gentleman says is correct, that they've taken into account saving some of the buffer along that wetland and some of those trees that's to the west of this project, then I would probably actually be in favor of the variance. It sounds like they are doing the right thing environmentally, and I believe that site, it's very important to those wetlands behind it. It's about probably a 400-acre system that drains south all the way down to the Windover. So it's an important system. So I think I would have to change that to in favor of the variance, if what I'm hearing is correct.
Are there any questions for this witness? Thank you very much for coming up.
Thank you.
Do I have any other cards, please?
No, sir.
All right. All right. Well, he was in favor, so I don't guess you need to rebut, do you? Okay. So at this time, seeing no other else, I will close the public hearing and bring it back for the commission for discussion. At this time, are there any more questions of staff? Yes, go ahead.
The same question that I asked the first witness, is the remainder of that south section of Singleton 20 feet? Or is it all the 30 feet?
It's whatever's designated through that map, that section.
Is the map on the...
It's not part of an attachment, but I can give you that
I
section.
can answer that.
I have Municode up, I just don't know where the
That
map is.
map, it shows 30 feet all the way from Garden Street to 405, to South Street, so. That's shown on the map itself, it's 30 feet.
So yeah, on that section, that Exhibit A, buffers, it does have that portion of Singleton as 30 feet all along there. No, this is in the code.
Oh, this is
Section
in the code.
30-335C.
Okay. But as you looked at the road going down, it's mostly all residential. Is that not correct? From basically that point south,
That is correct.
with the exception, I think, those townhouses back there, it's kind of commercial. Okay.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. And to the north and adjacent property to the east, those are both commercial properties, and their buffers, if there are any, would have been enforced at 20 feet. Is that correct? Being existing properties for the shopping center across the street?
Yes, those are also along Singleton. Are you talking about the ones along
Correct,
Singleton?
yeah.
Those would also be 30 feet as well.
For any future
Future,
construction,
yes,
but
it'd be that
they
30
were,
feet.
in fact, constructed at 20 feet. Is that correct?
I'm not sure what is the landscape area as existing right now.
Well, to be clear, the landscape code didn't exist at the time these structures were built. So that's what they're dealing with, the adjacent structures. So,
All right, any other discussion?
I just want to clarify, when I read it, the variance requested is really an 8-foot variance to have a 22-foot buffer, right? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. So it's not for the full part of 30, all right? Thank you
It's
for
a
that
funny
clar-
way that the application has it phrased, so that's why I just want to clarify it.
I personally feel that if future development were to happen, that would be something, parking spaces could be eliminated, that would be a big deal. But I like the idea of saving the trees in the back and the concentrated way that they went with the retaining walls and all to keep the, not having to spread out and take so much area for retention. Because, yes, I've been by that lot physically, and it does go all downhill.
I have a question. The trees that you were speaking about, were the 3 trees that you wanted to save, that you're going to keep there?
2 major ones.
What kind of trees are they?
So if I come back.
Yes.
Okay. The live oaks, or
Okay.
oak trees. They're oak trees, and I'd have to look at the plans to tell you. I think there's a 20. I feel like there's a 28 and a 24 or something like that. But so 2 large oak trees and then 9 smaller ones. I might be able to read it on here. Okay, so 30-inch and a 26. So 30-inch oak and a 26-inch oak. But again, they're clustered in there with some palms and other trees.
Okay.
And so, like I said, it results in 9 other trees being saved that wouldn't otherwise be protected.
All right. Thank
But
you.
they will be.
Well, while you're there, practically speaking, if the variance is denied, all the good work that you've done and planned for environmentally stays, plus there's another 8 feet of landscape.
That's
and
right.
if your variance is approved, all the good work environmentally stays, and you're just losing 8 feet of landscape, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So, all right.
But to be fair, I mean, again, like the client, we've got a demand study that demonstrates that we need the parking spaces. So, and they've spent a lot of money and made a lot of concessions along the way, with the code to meet all the, take care of all the environmental concerns and to address everything that was needed. So we're not looking at this as a super big ask, but we'd certainly appreciate it if you would have approved the request.
I would like to comment on Member Smith Rodriguez's point. If the item is voted upon tonight, then it's res judicata. The issue has been decided for this specific code provision. And I've heard staff recommend that the variance, if you're inclined to approve it, should be conditioned upon approval of the Development Review Committee's approval of the parking justification, which has not been granted yet. Since that meeting has not been conducted, I would recommend, if that's the direction that you all are considering, to at least discuss tabling the item so that that determination can be made by staff, and then to further determine whether the variance is absolutely necessary.
Does that delay us another month?
Yes, it would, and you have the option of not agreeing to table it and just have the item decided tonight, but it is something worth discussing with the commission.
Yeah. I mean, we can't wait another month.
Let me ask council, if the parking plan is approved whenever, next month, a variance would still be needed here. It would just make it clearer with no conditions, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
I think what's being said is that if staff for some reason weren't to approve what they've already said they would approve, then we wouldn't need the variance.
Because you're saying there wouldn't be the 40, or
I think staff has, I think that there's a possibility that the DRC may approve less than 50 parking spaces. I think that's a variable that I don't know the answer to.
I see. So if the parking is not approved, then there's no need for a variance because you'll have 15 parking spots. And if the parking is approved, then you still need the variance. All right. I think that makes it more clear.
So just to make it clear, should we go forward and the parking calculation goes ahead, that would be an administrative waiver and not a DRC.
I misspoke, sorry.
All right. Any other clarification or questions? Yes, sir.
Just a minor note. I believe if this administrative decision were denied, it could still come back before this board as an administrative appeal.
Not if you deny it tonight.
Okay, understand.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion or comments? I'd like to hear a recommendation, please.
Well, by way of discussion,
All right.
what I find kind of frustrating in hearings like this, the code is very clear, and the cursory review of the issue, it's 4 parking spots, right? But when we don't have testimony and evidence in a more formal proceeding, such as why is it so important to have these 4 extra spots, which is totally outside of our purview, right? Then it's hard to simply justify it or waive it off. Because the code, whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise, 20 feet on the north side and 30 feet on the south side, it's very clear, and it can easily be met with a cursory review of not infringing too much on the applicant's request. And that's what's hard about these type of issues. Because even if we got the best reason in the world as to why they need those extra 4 spots, it's not really within our purview under the code.
Other discussion or comments?
It is a little bit confusing to me. It is a little bit confusing because, the DRC could have approved it prior to getting to this meeting, approved the the parking spaces increase. But I don't think it's in their, they can do that like more than 125%. I don't think so.
So per the city engineer, the comment was that the should a parking calculation be provided and all other requirements of the code are met, a administrative waiver would approve the excess parking.
All the way up to 233%.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Hope that answered your question.
Yes and no, but that's
Yes and
okay.
no.
I mean, if I'm hearing that correctly, if all other provisions of the code are met, including the landscaping buffer, unless they get a variance, which to me says a variance really needs to be granted outright without conditions, which would be the only way, according to that statement, that the parking would be approved. By making it conditional, we're back to square one, where they should have approved or not approved it from the get-go.
I share similar thoughts on the issue and ready to move the question if you're.
Okay. All right. Please.
I move to approve variance 7, 2021 for 90 South Singleton Avenue. Variance to LDR section 30-335C, Exhibit A, buffers to allow less than a 30-foot landscape buffer from the front right-of-way. The specifics were to allow it to be 22 feet. No conditions.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second to that, please?
A second for discussion.
Very good. We have a second. Further discussion.
Well, if you look at that landscape buffer, the 22 feet, that includes the 5-foot sidewalk. So in reality, the landscape buffer is only 17 feet.
Okay.
Well, isn't that still the same variance had it been 30 with a 5-foot sidewalk?
Probably, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
foot for foot, it'd be the same concept.
Any other discussion or comments? All right, we've had a motion. We've had a second. May we have roll call, please?
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Member Van Deven?
Yes.
Member Wheelis?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahid?
Yes.
Very good. So we can move on and y'all can have your next discussion with the city. All right. Thank you. Okay. Expand back up. All right. Next on the hit parade, we're going to Variance 8-2021. The address is 3728. Is that Crafton? Crafton? Is that right? Okay, Crafton Court, about a lot width requirement. So staff, would you fill us in on that, please?
Okay, so this item begins on page 35, the agenda. So the applicant is requesting a variance to section 28-303C, intensity and dimensional standards, to allow less than the required 100-foot lot width minimum on property located in the single-family low-density zoning district located at 3728 Grattan Court. These surrounding zoning districts are to the north, south, east, and west, single-family low-density. The property is currently a vacant residential lot. I've already mentioned the powers of the board, so once again, I'll move ahead to the analysis. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow less than minimum 100-foot lot width required in the R1A zoning. According to Section 37-1, definitions, frontage is the linear distance measured along abutting public rights-of-way. Lot width, according to Section 37-1, is defined as the distance between straight lines connecting the front and rear lines at each side of the lot, measured across the front building line. At the existing site, a building line at the 100-foot lot width mark would allow for a buildable area of 3,572 square feet. The total building footprint of the applicant's proposed development is 4,809 square feet. The applicant is requesting a variance of 14 feet, which is in addition to the administrative waiver that was granted for 10 feet. This would allow for the applicant's building line to begin where the lot width measures 76 feet. For visual purposes, the lot widths are illustrated in the attachments of your agenda, the 100, the 14, and the 100, and where the administrative waiver was granted, along with the requested 14 feet, which this variance is being heard for. There are public utility and drainage easements located along the perimeter of the parcel. In addition, a pumping station is located at the side and rear yard, which impedes the applicant's ability to shift development to the site while meeting rear yard setback requirements for the size of the home that is proposed. Staff recommends denial of the variance. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would not deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district, as the lot meets the minimum size required in the R1A zoning district. A building line at the 100-foot lot width allows for a buildable area of 3,572 square feet. If the board is inclined to approve the application, staff does not believe that the welfare and safety of the public is at risk, being that the surrounding residential lots are also similar in shape. The proposed building will be located at the same distance as the neighboring lots. That concludes my presentation. I'll be able to answer any questions.
Questions of staff? Looking at the map, which I'm on page 40, I guess it is, it shows proposed structure there. Is it going to be coming off Grafton, or is it coming off the other Susanna Road?
The frontage?
Well, where the driveway will be located.
The driveway will be located, Grattan would be fronting the property, which is where the driveway will be coming off.
Okay, wait a minute. Now I'm seeing the squiggly lines. I am seeing it now. Thank you. Okay. Further questions of staff?
There's two driveways, right, to the site? Is there going to be two driveways, one from Grafton and the other one from Susanna?
From what we have, the information we have, it to be that one driveway off of Grattan Court.
Okay. The way the plan shows it, it shows two.
We're looking at page 40. Okay. Well, let's ask the applicant.
Well, the address to this is going to be Grafton, or is it going to be Susanna?
The address is listed at 3728 Grattan Court on the application. We can ask the applicant.
Okay. All right. We will do that.
Well, most likely, this, the way it was put together, the early stages with the plat. I mean, the city approved it at the time. That meets all the standards, otherwise they won't have approved it.
Right. Okay.
Okay, I'm okay with this.
All right. Any other questions, staff? If not, we'll open the public hearing at this time. May I have the first card, please?
Robert Robinson.
Good afternoon, or good evening, shall I say. Welcome, and would you give your name and address for the record, please, sir?
Robert Robinson, 5454 River Edge Drive, Titusville. And I have some exhibits that's going to help you all out quite a bit. Everybody have one? Have a couple, three, actually?
Okay, we got it. Thank you.
So if you look at the first one, the survey with the pretty colors on it, there you go. First off, staff has identified this as a rectangular lot. It is obviously not rectangular. If it was rectangular, it'd be 100 foot wide. We wouldn't be having this conversation. So it is a trapezoid. It's 116 feet across the back, 54 feet across the front. So if you look at the 100-foot line that the plat approved and what the city approved years ago, the orange line is a 100-foot line. The setback on the front of the property, because Grattan is the front of the property per the city, the setback of the house would have to be 108 feet. That's what fits in that. We'd have to put the house in that back half of the lot, back there with the pumping station. So if you go to the administrative waiver line, the green line, which is 90 feet, the front setback would still have to be 63 feet. Okay? We're asking for 45. The required setback on the front is 30 feet with all the neighborhood. And all the houses in the entire neighborhood have a front setback of between 30 and 40 feet. If you look at the second page, that shows an aerial of the cul-de-sac that this lot is on. And you'll see that these are half-acre large lots, and they're very large houses. Okay? So you see that 100-foot line that I've identified. Again, we'd have to put the house in the back half of the lot next to the pumping station. And we would be nowhere near the size of the houses that are there or the setbacks. We'd be distinctly different than everybody else in not enjoying the same privileges as everybody else. So that's the point of this variance request. There's two houses on the cul-de-sac. One has a 30-foot front setback. One has a 40. And the rest of the houses, there's only 15 lots in this neighborhood. All the rest of the existing houses all have between 30 and 40-foot front setback as well. We're requesting it to be 45.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
If the setbacks were enforced according to how the code reads currently, you would be restricted to a building somewhere around 3,700 square feet. Is that correct?
Well, it's not just the size, it's the location on the lot. We'd have to build it on the back half of the lot when none of the other houses in the subdivision are built on the back half of the lot.
I understand, but additionally,
Yes.
the average square footage of the homes in the subdivision
Are substantially larger than that.
somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 square feet. Is that correct?
And even bigger. The one next door is like, with its added garage and everything, it's huge.
I understand.
Right.
Just wanted you to get that
Absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to make a house that's comparable to the community, that fits the lot. We're on a corner, so we've got a side setback that we got to deal with as well on the corner lot. So we've designed a house that fits perfectly, fits with the neighborhood perfectly. There's a letter from the HOA fully supporting us. Anyway.
I do. You done? Okay. I just want to let you on a little secret. We designed the subdivision.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
The
Let's
main-
step outside.
The main thing about the subdivision, too, it was intricate, okay?
Right.
And if you can, would it be possible, if you change the address, everything would fit?
That's
If you
just it.
change the address from,
Absolutely.
but you have two driveways there.
Correct.
So if you change the address to Susanna Drive,
Correct.
then everything would fit and you don't need a variance.
That's correct, but the city dictates that's the frontage, and that's the address.
No, but the frontage would be on Susanna Drive.
It would be, but I'm
Right.
telling you that the city told us the frontage is because of whatever ordinances.
It's basically, it's a fire department, it's an address decision. It's done by the county.
Right.
And you may have a request, to the county, say, I would like to change the address to be
Susanna.
on Susanna. And you already have your two driveways, so you don't need really a variance. And I'm not sure, is that doable?
Not quite the way you described it. The deciding that the Grattan is the front of the lot is specifically described in the in the LDR, that the narrowest portion of the frontage is going to be if it fronts on two streets, the narrowest one will be the front. If you, is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's another issue there, aside from the fire department. We probably get past the fire department, but the fact that there's another LDR that we would have to deal with would be excessively complicating, I believe. I think we can move forward in this direction, and this is exactly what the variance process is designed for, is for lots that are outsized, undersized, misshapen, for whatever reason, because of the specific requirements of the development, had to be shaped that way. We're going to run into exactly the same scenario across the street on the other side of
The other side, yeah.
So we probably should be prepared for that at some point.
Depending on what they want to use.
Looking around the cul-de-sac on the other end of the street, we're going to see some similar issues. It was one of the oddities of the design, but of course, development is important, and we move forward with it when we can, and it's reasonable.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for that explanation.
Thank you.
Didn't realize that the shortest width would be considered the address.
Well, it could be that shortest width too. It could be 25 feet, and you can't put the driveway in there. And it's very close to the, like if it's closer to the intersection too, that driveway would be, would be very dangerous, to
Yes.
put that there.
That was a comment from our plan review. We've had this in for quite a while for plan review, and just this frontage thing came up at the last minute. We got this in at the last minute. I've been looking for this permit for a couple of months. And we had to be 40 feet back from the intersection for this secondary driveway. And you'll see that's identified on the survey. That's one of the requirements. And it is a driveway that it primarily comes in on Susanna, but it loops around to Grattan as well. So like I said, we're just trying to be consistent with the neighborhood, and I think we've checked all the boxes.
All right. Any other questions or comments for this witness? Seeing none, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Do I have any other cards to speak to this item?
Douglas Lamoth.
Very good. Welcome, sir. If you give your name and address for the record, please, sir.
It's Douglas Lamoth. My address is 1117 Meadow Lark Drive, Titusville. My wife and I moved down here from Tennessee in February. We bought the lot last fall. All the plans were submitted in early January to be approved, etc., and we were told 3 to 4 weeks. Well, it took till 6 weeks until they were ready to write the locate a permit, but then this all came up, which we knew nothing about, and now I'm sitting here, okay, we've got most of our stuff in storage, we're living in a small house, I've got $140,000 already into this place, and if we can't get that variance, build that house back on that lot under the circumstances that exist, we can't build the house that we want. And I just would like to see this move forward. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Were there any questions for this witness? All right, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I should have walked away.
It's okay. Thank you, sir. Are there any other witnesses for this?
Betty Lamoth.
Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Betty Lamont. I live at 1117 Meadowlark Drive. And I feel like that if you do not grant the variance, that it will devaluate the property and therefore devalue the home that could be built there. We feel like that our home is congruent with the other homes in the neighborhood. We feel that they have, since they have been privy to our house plans, and they all seem rather excited that we are going to build on this lot. They actually consider it an eyesore, so they would like it to be cleaned and developed, and they do seem to be extremely happy with our proposed home. So I think that if you can't find it to grant us a variance, that you won't be disappointing just Doug and me. You will also be disappointing the rest of the residents in the subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, we did get handed which we were sent an email earlier today about the letter from the Hidden Oaks residential community signed by the president, treasurer, and the secretary requesting approval of this request tonight before us. All right. No other. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming up. Any other cards?
No, sir.
All right. So we'll close the public hearing at this time and bring it back before the board. Is there questions further of staff? Or comments? Okay. Okay. All right. So we have the recommendation. Our pleasure of the board, please.
I'll make a motion to approve variance number 8-2021 for 3728 the Grattan Court. Due to the fact that, if the setbacks used from Susanna Drive, then the variance won't be required. And it would meet the setbacks too from Grattan Court. So my feeling, that's my justification of the variance.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call, please?
Member Wheelis,
Yes.
Chairman Taylor,
Yes?
Vice Chairman Shahab,
Yes.
Member Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Member Van Deven.
Yes.
Congratulations. This point is going forward. All right. Let's see, I got to back up here. All right, so that closes our new business. At this point, do we have any petitions or requests from the public present to speak? All right, seeing none come forward. Report, staff, do we have anything to report to us?
Congratulations, Ms. Margaret Van Deven, on her appointment, upgrading from alternate to regular member at our recent council meeting. And we just like to thank you all for continuing to serve.
All right. So that means we have a vacancy, is that correct?
Yes, there's an alternate vacancy. And we also have the other alternate member in the audience. Thank you for attending, sir.
Meeting on standby. Great. All right, so we have an opening. If anybody in the public would like to consider and meets the criteria, there are certain criteria. I won't get into it tonight. Any other staff requests or anything?
No.
How is next month looking at this point?
At the moment, we have at least two, actually, if I'm not mistaken, but at least one for sure.
Okay, could be possible we'll be here in June then. All right. All right, any reports from anybody on the board? Any news or happiness? All right. Well, seeing none, we'll call this meeting adjourned and have a great evening. Thank you.